Hello and welcome back to Ancorton Models TV, and today I'm going to show you how to build the Village Well kit in 00 gauge from Ancorton Models. So let's take a look and get it built. So of course the first job is going to be to see what we actually get in the pack. He says, so we've got a main fret, a piece of wooden dowel, a secondary fret, and a sheet of instructions as well. So I'm going to have a quick scan through the instruction sheet just so I've got a vague idea of what I'm attempting to do, and then we can crack on with the build. Okay, so having read through the instructions, it does seem fairly simple and easy to put together, and I think if you do follow the instructions you should be able to get this kit together quite easily yourselves. But anyway, let's crack on with the build, and the first thing to do is going to be to break out the base, the two base pieces and the two upright pieces for the main well section. So let's get those cut out. And these ones. Those two. Oh, let's put those to one side for a minute. So it's fairly obvious how it goes together. Parts should slot together fairly easily. And I'm just doing a little bit of a dry run just to make sure that they do in fact actually slot together, which they seem to do quite happily. He says. This one seems a bit stiff. And there we go. Now you'll probably notice that by pushing both of the base pieces right up to the top, we then got a bit of an overhang with the pegs, and that's a mistake that is easy enough to make, but what you should actually have is the bottom part of the base piece should match the bottom part of the uprights, as then it'll sit level, and the surrounding piece that goes around with all the stone effect detail on will then actually be at the correct width. And that's something that the instructions doesn't actually tell you. So once you've got it set to the correct height and you're happy with it, that's when you can then go in with the glue, making sure that everything is as square as you can make it. So the glue I'm going to use today is going to be the Deluxe Materials Rocket Card Glue. I've used it on loads and loads of laser cut kits like this. It's quick and simple enough to use, although it is a little bit runny, so do be aware of that. Of course, if you wanted, you could use something like some Yoo-hoo, might be quite a good one to use, but this is absolutely fine. Or if you wanted a PVA glue, would be just as good. You don't need a lot of glue on it, just enough to grab the components and then just make sure that they are all buttered up nicely together as they should be, so it's going to be nice and square and ready to go with the next piece. So I can now put that to one side for a minute whilst I have a quick look at what the next section was, which is to glue the inner and the outer walls into position. Now it says with these you're best off rolling them around something like a pencil. A craft knife is ideal, and just do one at a time. And it'll probably be easier to start off with the inner one than it will with the outer one, because then you've just got a bit more access in to do both of them. Now then, with the inner wall, I don't believe there is a right and wrong way to put it up, but you may be or may not be able to see there that the top layer here has a lot of smaller bricks on the top, so I'm going to put those towards the top rather than them being at the bottom, just so that once it's made up you can still sort of see that detail. So I'm just going to roll it around my craft knife handle, just so it's got that bit of curve in it ready to go on, and then I should be able to pop it in there, hopefully, like so. And don't worry about there being a slight overlap to it, we should be able to go in there quite happily. And what you can then do is, because we've not put the outer wall on yet, we can actually glue that from the outside so that we know it's in place. I'm just checking that it's fairly level. One thing they possibly could have done with including in this kit was an extra pair of blocks or something around the other sides, just to help keep it a bit more square. So let's find a fine nozzle. So using a fine nozzle on this just to help it, just gonna squirt a bit of glue just at the top and the bottom of that. Just not putting it all the way around because I don't need to. Just putting it in a few places around there. That's what this will do. This will help stiffen the whole thing up. And then if you wanted, just to make sure it was pressed up against everything, you can just roll the inside of your craft knife just around the inside, just to make sure it's as close to the edge as it wants to go. Not put it to glue up there. It's going to keep dribbling everywhere now, isn't it? So that's the inside wall. Now to do the outside wall. Again, I'm just going to roll it around the craft knife. It doesn't need to be as tight as the inner wall because it's obviously a larger circumference, but it will, again, it'll just help it bend around the circle of it, and it should match up quite nicely once you got it around. So what I can do with this one now is put a layer of glue around both of the circles, and then we should be able to fit the card onto it. So that's the glue all the way around. Again, I'm putting the little fine stones towards the top, and then let's just work the piece on. And hopefully we'll get to the end and it should all stick together. Now what you can do to hold that in place, because it's a round, you could use something like an elastic band, just quickly wrap that around there just to help hold it in place, which I think is what I will do in a minute. I'll go and grab one before moving on to the next stage. So I'll just go and grab an elastic band and then we can move on to the next bit. So now that I'm leaving that to one side to dry, we can now move on to the next bit, which is going to be to start putting the roof together, which is parts 5 and 6 on here. So again, in the case, I'll just cut them out. Like so, and they will sit on the roof quite happily. Now what you need to make sure that you do is that that one of the longer side, so the top edge here, is dead straight. The other side isn't. It's designed to be a little bit wobbly, just so it adds a bit of character to it. That is the side you want at the bottom, because at the top we do have some ridge tiles which will go on to cover the join at the top. So it says for the roof, glue on the roof, ensuring an even overhang on each side, and then trim the ridge tile strip to fit and glue in place. So that's what we'll do. Again, I don't want a lot of glue on there. As you might find with it being wood, that the glue soaks in quite quickly at times, so you might need to go over a couple of times with it. So let's get roof on there as even as possible, and just hold it on for a minute or so, just while the glue hopefully grabs it, which it has done. Whilst that is drying off, I'll cut out the ridge tiles and get ready to glue those on, or trim down as necessary. So with this particular pack, I can cut off one of the ridge tile sets, because you can see it's long enough with those ones there. Right. So with the ridge tiles, obviously we're going to want to shape them so that they form a ridge, and there is a score line down the middle which you may or may not be able to see. So using the back of my craft knife, I am just very carefully just going to follow that line down it, just to open that score line up a little bit more. I've not pressed down hard, just let the weight of the knife do the job, and then very carefully I should be able to start bending and folding the ridge tiles over. So I'm going to fold them right over flat to begin with and then open them out. That makes it a little bit easier. And then just double check that it's going to fit on there, which it will. So now we can apply the glue to it. Again, you don't want a lot on there because we don't want it squeezing out too much. There probably will be some that squeezes out, but we don't want a lot on there if we can help it. Just get it on, just press it into place, and it should naturally form the roof profile. Right, fold it. So that is, in the main part, the well built. There is a few more bits to go yet, but whilst that is all drying off on one side, we can look at actually making the buckets that come with this little kit to go together. And there's 2 buckets in the kit, so I'm just going to make one up for now. There's no point in me showing you how to make 2 unless I make a real mess of the first one. So to make the buckets, we've got these little parts which are parts 7A, we've got part 11, and part 12 is a hoop as well. So it seems fairly simple. So it says make the buckets by gluing the side, part 11, around the base, 7A, and then bend the handle, part 12, carefully and glue into place, which is figure 4. So as with the other ridge piece, the other pieces, it's best to find something small to roll the sides of the bucket around, and perhaps with the piece of dowel that we get with this kit, which we'll be using late in a few minutes, that's possibly the best part to use because it's small enough. So that's what I've done there. Now hopefully that will fit around the base of the bucket, and this is probably going to be one of the fiddly little jobs to do and to get right. I think it's going to require a bit of patience on it. It's not exactly simple. I've not even got the glue on it yet, and it's being a little bit naughty, let's say. Oh, there we go. So I think it's one of those that with a bit of patience you should be able to make the buckets up. I think it is one of those where you're going to get a little bit messy doing it. So let's get a little bit of glue just down the bottom edge of the card. Add the base, and then let's see if we can just roll it together, and something might come about. Now it's probably a bit too small to get an elastic band around, but because it is small you can sort of roll it in your fingers, which will help heat the glue to dry it and keep it, tight to the base piece. So you should end up initially with like a little well, it is supposed to be a bucket, but you could call it like a little chimney pot or something like that for this bit. An alternative would be not to use these, make these buckets up. It'd be to, buy a proprietary one, perhaps from Springside or something like that, to use as a more modern bucket for it. I'm sure either would be suitable. Now, I've no idea how these little handles are going to go on. There's one for each of them, and they are very, very small, and you might just be able to see it there. I have a feeling that it's one of those that you're probably going to want to replace with some brass wire or something if you decide to in fact use them, because they are so small, and I haven't lost it but it's there. Let's see if I can grab it with some tweezers. Just to hold it, so we've got, the tweezers are a bit finer than my fingers, so let's just see how we go. Don't know if I've actually got any glue on that then. So the handle is on there, and it is very fiddly to sort of get it on there. As I said, some brass might be a bit better, but it has gone on there, which you might just be able to see on the camera there. But yes, that's how to build the buckets that go with this particular kit. So I'm just going to leave that to one side to dry, and I think I'll definitely be leaving the other one until later. So we've got a couple of last little bits to do. So now that essentially this is built, we've got this piece of dowel, and we also have another small flat piece which is part 7 on here. Now what we need to do is we're going to need to cut this dowel to the right size, and it needs to be the right length to fit firstly through the middle and out the other side of the well, and then enough to make a handle as well. So first of all, I just want to see if I can actually get it through the middle, both sides, which I have done, so hopefully you can see that's gone through there. So I'm just going to mark the end of this about there somewhere, so I've got a cut position on it, and then I can cut that with, because it's only small, I should get away with some little side cutters like so, nice and easy, and then with those pliers just straighten that up a bit. Some paper, just smooth off the end. So I can now fit this measured piece into the well. So last little bit. Oh, there we go. Being careful in the process not to break the roof off. It probably would have been easier to actually done that bit first, but never mind, it might mean we can actually see what we're doing here. So that is now through. So if I cut the other straight piece out and cut another small piece off the dowel, we can then make up the handle for that, and I'll glue the roof back on afterwards. So let's do that. I would say that is probably one of the differences to make in the kit, would be to decide when that rod goes through, and I think in all fairness, yes, putting it through after is probably a bad idea, because you've got all the stress of trying to push it through and it not wanting to match in there. So you've got that. We want a similar sized piece for the handle. As to that, so let's do that. Put the rest of that to one side. Right, let's try gluing that on there. So I've glued most of our handle together, which basically made a little L shape, which you should be able to see there, and that I will glue on to the end of the bar that goes through. So whilst that does dry off, let's re-glue the roof in place. Obviously I might have needed a little bit more glue than I originally thought. Like with any kit, you need to just take your time with it, and sometimes bits will fall apart like that. But luckily, there's no damage done, and as you can see, it's back together. We've just got to let it dry before we stick that final end on. So that will be about there. Right then. Now that has seemingly dried a bit better, we can now add the last little bit on the end. Is that handle? And hopefully that should then be this kit pretty much made up. So where could we use this kit? Well, obviously it's designed as like a village well, so a traditional on the village green could be quite a good place for it, or on a side road somewhere, on a little triangle or something. There's a whole multitude of different places where you could, in theory, put a little village well like this. I mean, you could even have it in the middle of a forest type scene. It could go virtually anywhere. That is essentially the well kit made up. I would say that this handle part is probably the fiddliest bit at the end, really. So it's not a super easy kit to put together, but it's a good average modeler should be able to knock this up fairly quickly, and you may want to make some improvements to it as well. So you might want to change the handle to some other design, like I suggested earlier. Maybe you want to use some different buckets for it. Well, essentially that is the well kit complete. So there we are, that's how to put together that lovely little Ancorton 00 gauge village well kit. As you can see, it went together fairly well. There's a few little bits that probably needed to be done in a slightly different order, and there's possibly some improvements that you could make to it. But all that remains for this now is to be is for the glue to dry and for it to then be painted. So anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, do remember to give us a good old thumbs up. Also make sure that you hit that subscribe button as well, because that really does help us out quite a bit. And until next time, happy modelling.